Welcome back to Old School Sports and an out of the park baseball tutorial. One of the questions that I've been asked somewhat frequently in the comments of our videos is how do you set up your minor league teams? And I put out a tutorial video about 2.5 months ago that kind of covered how I set up my entire minor league system more broadly, and have subsequently been asked to put out a quick video as to how I set up a minor league team. So I'm going to go through that in this video. Hopefully there's something in it that's useful to you. You can see broadly looking across my minor league system, most of the upper level teams have around 30 players. Typically when I'm setting up a minor league team, like to have 5 to 7 outfielders, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 infielders, 3 catchers, and then 13 to 16 pitchers. The reason I do this is that I like to have a little bit bigger rosters for the inevitable injuries that will happen. I don't like to be micromanaging the minor league teams on a daily basis during the season. Check in every month or so on how they're doing. So I want to have a few extra players on the teams. And then honestly, when it gets down to the lower level teams, the rookie ball teams, you can see I'm down to 23 players in both of my FCL teams right now, but we're going to be adding another 10 players to each of those teams through the draft about the time the season is starting in July. So those rosters will be about the same size. And then my DSL teams, which are a little more established at this point, have somewhat fewer players, 27 and 28 on them, down to 27 players in my international complex right now after moving up some players to the DSL teams, and then also just cutting some players that don't have a ton of potential and also had bad personalities. Quite honestly, I spend probably less time on my rookie ball teams than I do on the others. I kind of view the rookie ball as a kind of Lord of the Flies situation. I don't mind if there's 35 or 40 people on those teams. If there's a super prospect, I'll force start them at a position to ensure they get playing time, but generally I'm set up so that the highest potential players are going to be getting playing time anyways. So I just kind of let the rookie ball kind of work itself out in some cases, and then eventually manage things a little more tightly in A, high A, double A, and triple A. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you probably realize that I'm very focused on good coaching and very focused on good personalities throughout my organization. We're going to take a deep dive in this tutorial into our AAA team in Indianapolis. First, just starting with the coaching. Our manager is Victor Lara. You can see he's good with development, excellent with mechanics, good with handling aging, and he's also got good relationships, although those are with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Would like to see what he has with the Indianapolis Indians, since that's the team he manages. And you can see he's got broadly very good relationships across the board with the team. So he's got a good personality. He's got a good influence on just about everyone in the clubhouse. And importantly, for a minor leaguer, good with development and excellent with mechanics. So development is helping the player kind of reach the potential that our scout thinks they have. Mechanics is more maybe unlocking some untapped potential that the scouts haven't even necessarily recognized yet. So he's strong across the board, a good solid minor league manager. Our pitching coach, Cody Rock, legendary at teaching pitching, outstanding at developments, outstanding at influencing mechanics. Can't ask for much better than that. His relationship is only average, but you can see he's got excellent and good relationships with all the pitchers that he's going to be working with on a daily basis. Doesn't get along as well with the position players, but fortunately for us, he doesn't have a huge influence on them. And then the last coach we have at AAA is our hitting coach, Jake Rhodes. Outstanding at teaching hitting, legendary at development, good at influence and mechanics. and only an average relationship, but you can see his positive relationships are weighted towards the position players, and his more negative relationships are weighted towards the pitchers, given that he's outstanding at teaching hitting, legendary at handling development, even though neither Rock nor Rhodes broadly has good relationships overall. Their relationships are kind of focused the way we'd want them to be, with Rock getting along better with the pitchers and Rhodes getting along better with the hitters. So big time coaching staff to me is very important. And if I were to look at another team in the minors, you're going to see pretty similar things. Just to make the point, I'll jump down to A-ball. Our manager, Drew Naylor, good with development, good with mechanics. And in terms of his relationships with Bradenton, good relationships with the players down there. Taking a look at our pitching coach down in A-ball, outstanding at teaching pitching, excellent with development, good with mechanics, average relationships, but again, more positively weighted towards the pitchers. And last but not least, our hitting coach down there, Jose Costanza, legendary at teaching hitting, excellent with development, legendary with mechanics, and he's got good relationships across that single A team. And most of my minor league teams kind of look similar in terms of coaching. When you start getting down into rookie ball, sometimes it's hard to attract the best coaches in the world there. But I think it's pretty important to have good coaches to really influence the development of your players. Right now, we've got the 8th best minor league system in baseball, which, given that we've made with the Pittsburgh Pirates playthrough that I've been doing for the last 9 seasons, we've made the playoffs, I believe, 6 years in a row now. We've made the playoffs the last 6 years, and then 7 of the 9 years that we've been the GM of the team. So to still have the 8th best minor league system, despite the fact that we've been drafting in the mid to late 20s for most of the last decade, I think is pretty good. As I mentioned, we invest a lot in making sure we've got good personnel. Not the most exciting thing to piece a coaching staff together that way, but I think it's worthwhile. And the other thing that we do in terms of our organization is invest pretty heavily in scouting and development, particularly given the fact that we've got the 25th biggest budget in baseball. So coaching is one critical thing, but then obviously when you get into setting up the individual roster, I kind of outlined already, 5 to 7 outfielders, 6 to 8 infielders, 3 catchers, and then 13 to 16 pitchers is optimally what I'd like to have on a team. So somewhere in the neighborhood of around 30 players when all is said and done. And when I set up each individual team's roster, the main thing that I think about is every player on this team needs to have a purpose. As we go through this, even for my AAA roster, you'll see that there are only less than a handful of players who are real major league prospects that I think are going to be part of this organization 3 to 5 years down the line. But that said, all 30 roster spots have a purpose and a reason for that player to be on this team. And if there's not a reason for that player to be on this team, they shouldn't be there, or they should be demoted down to AA, high A, somewhere else where their personality, their skill set, the position they play helps fill a hole on a different roster, or just move on from them entirely. So taking a look at our AAA roster in Indianapolis, we've got 6 outfielders on the team. As we'll see, it's actually really only 5 outfielders, but we're doing a little bit of a cross-training of one of our better prospects. Starting out with our right fielder, Jonathan Thompson. Personality, nothing special. He is a borderline prospect at this point. He's been in AAA the last 2 years, been reasonably productive with a 119 OPS plus, 125 WRC plus, but he is almost 26 years old at this point. He is a player who, if we had a bunch of injuries at the major league level, we could plug in as a fifth outfielder and think that he could hold his own at the major league level. But he is getting to the point, given that he doesn't really have any great influence as far as his personality, where he may be in his last year or two in our organization, since he's not really a big time prospect at this point. I like the fact that he can bunt. I like the fact that he can run. If he had a really good personality, he's a guy who I could keep around for another 5 years in my minor league system, but probably getting close to the end of his useful time with us. Center fielder Jerry Drake is a more legitimate prospect. This is a player that we picked in the 4th round a few years ago. He's durable, only 23 years old, hit 309 in Double-A last year, 322 in High A ball the year before that. So really interested in seeing what he can do this year. He's going to get some regular playing time for us. Also has a good personality with high work ethic, low greed, looks like a pretty good defensive player. So Drake actually is going to be the third guy, along with Godfrey and Rivera, that we kind of put into a forced starting position. He's already fully developed at center field, so we are going to force start him at right field for the time being, just to ensure that he gets regular playing time. Juan Garza, 32-year-old center fielder. He's here for his personality, high adaptability, high work ethic, not a prospect at this point. You can see we've had him in AAA for the last 7+ years at this point. Some years, a while ago, he was still a marginal prospect. Now he's just kind of that Gramps in the clubhouse who is a good influence on players around him. Could he get a cup of coffee with the major league team if we had a bunch of injuries? Honestly, probably not with the talent we have around him, but still a reason to keep him around. Jaden Godfrey is a 24-year-old who was our first-round pick back in 2040. He is a real prospect. You could see that we're forced starting him in center field. Good personality, good defensive, great speed, knows how to bunt. Looks like he could be a pretty interesting contact hitter, not a lot of home run power. Did hit 300 in Double-A last year, so he is a real prospect. And we hope that the likes of Juan Garza and another guy who's on the team just for his personality, Ruben Sanabria, with that high adaptability, can be a positive influence on Drake and Godfrey, the real kind of prospects among our outfielders. Last but not least is Jerry Rivera, who is really a infielder by trade. You can see he looks like he could be a competent defensive infielder, also a competent defensive outfielder. He's kind of fully trained up at second base and third base, and first base pretty much knows how to play the position there. Hopefully we'd never have to play him at short, but we are going to force start him in left field now to hopefully get him fully developed there. Given that he's got a nice arm, then we'll turn to right field with him. Guy who was our first-round pick back in 2042. Hit 301 in Double-A last year and then 348 in a small amount of time in Triple-A. Still has some work to do as far as his gap power, home run power, eye, avoiding strikeouts and contact. A little bit of work to do in all of the batting categories according to our scout. So, and we're just trying to get him as versatile as possible defensively before we ultimately bring him up to the majors. Don't love the fact that he has low intelligence. If he was a half-star prospect, we probably wouldn't have him around with the low intelligence, but he's a legitimate prospect, and we hope that having some of the good personalities around him will help him develop. So that's a look at the 6 outfielders and the reasons that we've got each of them on the team. Now we're going to turn to the 8 infielders that we have on the roster right now. And one thing that's immediate that you can notice when you look at my infielders here is that my teams, particularly in AAA, tend to skew pretty high in age. I'm kind of willing to recognize that there may only be a handful of real prospects on the team. And rather than letting those prospects play with other kids their age, I don't mind having older players with really good personalities to hopefully influence the true prospects on the team. And then I also kind of, for a team that in the Pirates is hopefully going to be competing, certainly to get back into the playoffs this year and hopefully to win the World Series, I like to have a lot of players with those green arrows in AAA that could help us at the major league level if we do have some injuries. So, starting with shortstop Dave Casanova, this is a guy who was a scouting discovery of ours almost 8 years ago. Very good defensive player, good personality, spark plug, high adaptability and work ethic, and he's the only shortstop on our team. Happy birthday to Dave, by the way, today on March 28th of 2047, turning 26 today. We need somebody to play shortstop for us. He's got a good personality, good defensive player. If we had to bring him up to the majors to play shortstop for us for a few weeks with an injury, he seems like he could handle the position defensively. Clearly would not be much of an offensive player. Hit 247 last year in his introduction to AAA for us. But we've got to have a shortstop, so he's our shortstop. Icing Chu, another guy who's not really a big-time prospect anymore, did make it up to AAA last year where he hit just a $198, but he's got high leadership, good adaptability, a born leader, good guy to have around the other younger players. Mario Diaz, similar, great personality with high loyalty, adaptability, and work ethic, low greed. He's a guy who's spent 6 years in the majors. We've just picked him up as a minor league free agent signing yesterday. Another guy who, if we needed to fill a gap at the major league level, we could plug right in and gives us some organizational depth and a good personality. In AAA, Jaden Dixon, exactly the same thing. You may remember him. He was a player on our team a few years ago, has moved on. Also a guy we picked up as a minor league free agent signing yesterday. Another guy with a great personality, another guy who can handle the glove reasonably well, and I don't want to say hit respectably at the major league level, because if we look at his average over the last 6 seasons up in the majors, it's borderline respectable at best, but he's not going to hit a $150 for you at the major leagues, and he can handle the glove, and he's a good influence down in AAA while we have him there. Angel Osorio is more of a potential prospect, I guess, simply because he's younger, only 24 years old. Guy we picked up in a trade with the Phillies about a year and a half ago. Good personality. He's on the borderline of being a real prospect at this point. If he didn't have the good personality, probably wouldn't be on our team, but we like having him around to influence some of the real prospects. Angel Romero, not surprisingly, great personality with high leadership and work ethic, a guy who could function for us at the majors if we need. Zhao Jun Zema, 29-year-old second baseman, another guy with a good personality. And then last but not least, among the infielders, Ricky Caldera, 26-year-old. He's a borderline prospect at this point, which is why we're willing to deal with his low intelligence, high greed, and the fact that he occasionally gets into fights with fans. The feeling is with all of the other good personalities we've just talked through the infielders, even though there's not any big-time prospects among them, but those good personalities in the infield and the good personalities we'll have in the outfield will influence the Drakes, the Godfreys, the Riveras, the real prospects that we have on the team, as well as somebody like Caldera, who's a borderline prospect. Looking at his ratings, he's a very borderline prospect, but he is a guy who's averaged, in A and Double A the previous 2 seasons, over 20 homers and over 100 ribbies. Last year in AAA, hit 252 with 10 homers. Probably a tell that he is not a major league player, but we're going to give him one more year to see if he can figure things out. Turning to our catchers, got 3 catchers on the team. I tend to always have a crafty veteran 4A kind of guy on my AAA team. John Herrera is the example now. Love to have a captain personality around, good personality in general. Guy who's played 7 years in the majors. If we had to bring him up to be a backup catcher for us, he is certainly capable of doing that. But his morale is normal, even though he's not in the majors right now. Unhappy with his role on the team. Some of these older players can kind of become a problem over time when they don't get promoted and they want to be. So that's one thing that I do keep a eye on during the season, and then certainly when I get into minor league free agency at the end of the year, if I've got players whose morale is just horrible because they're angry about a lack of playing time, generally won't re-sign them, and we'll bring on somebody else with hopefully a good personality and a little more enthusiasm for what we're asking them to do in our organization. But love to have a captain personality on every team if possible. And this is a guy who could play catcher at the major league level for us in a pinch. Jonam Nasberg is actually the legitimate prospect here, although he is almost 26 years old at this point. Good personality, respectable defensively, and seems like he could maybe hold his own at the major league level with the bat, although he did hit only .221 last year in his first action in AAA. And then Mario Quiroz is similar to Herrera in a way at this point, a guy who is at this time in his last option year. He was a backup catcher for us 2 years in a row, moved him down to AAA last year to take advantage of that option year and make room on the major league roster for Chris Rodriguez, who was a real prospect with a bit better bat and a bit better glove. But Quiroz is a guy who, if we had injuries at the major league level, would be easy to put right back onto the major league roster. You can see his morale is angry now. He's not happy that he's been demoted to AAA coming out of spring training, and unhappy that he's not a major leaguer. So hopefully we've got enough strong personalities in the clubhouse that are more positive that we can outweigh any damage Quiroz can do. He is going to be arbitration eligible again after this year, looking for $1.3 million. And since he's in his last option year, very unlikely that Quiroz will be back in the Pirates organization next season. But if we can keep him around as an insurance policy for this year, that's what we're going to do. So essentially, when you're looking at all of these position players, all these good personalities are really to influence essentially three players: Jerry Drake, Jaden Godfrey, and Jerry Rivera, who are the three most legitimate and youngest prospects we have among everyday players. As I mentioned, Casanova with that glove could help us at some point. Osorio, maybe. Caldera, I don't think so, but we're still viewing him as a little bit of a prospect. And then Nasberg, as the youngest of the catchers, is kind of a prospect also. But it's really three players, but we want to make sure that those three real prospects are surrounded by the best personalities possible to hopefully be a real good influence on their development and maybe getting their personalities to evolve a little bit in a more positive direction over time. And as we turn to our pitching staff, you're going to see a similar situation here. There's really, two or three pitchers that are real prospects at this point in our view, and the rest of them are just guys around to hopefully be positive influences on their development and also help us feel a team that can be competitive on the field. Winning does help in terms of developing your players, and certainly want to be as competitive as possible, and you'll see that we've made some moves with the pitchers to do that. Mike Ceballos is one of the real prospects, 8th round draft pick from back in 2042. Really good personality for the 22-year-old. Put up a 3.90 ERA with 66 strikeouts and 67 innings in Double-A last year. Moved him up to Triple-A this year. Looks like he's probably a back of the bullpen type pitcher on a major league team. if he fully develops, and he's pretty close to fully developed. Actually, according to our scout, he is fully developed at this point. Looking at the OSA, they think he's got a little room to improve his control and his sinker. But he is a real prospect. He's not a top tier prospect. As I said, I think he's a guy who's the 12th, 13th, 14th man, 11th man in your pitching staff. But given that we typically run 12 or 13 pitchers, a guy like that still has value. John Williams is a guy who you may be surprised to see on my team. A 24-year-old with low work ethic. But he is actually a guy that we just traded for. I can't remember whether it was yesterday or today. It was today. We had a glut of catchers down in low A and high A ball, including Wade Bagnall, a 25-year-old, pretty much a meh prospect at this point, and Edgar Cardenas, who despite that brilliant catcher ability is just never going to hit. Hadn't made it out of rookie ball for us. He did hit 316 in rookie ball last year and 76 at-bats. But as much as I'd love to have a brilliant defensive catcher, it's got to be somebody who can handle major league pitching, and he certainly can't. So we traded the two of them away for John Williams, who is on this team simply because he is a legitimate AAA pitcher. He's not a top prospect for us. I doubt he'll ever pitch in the majors for us. But when you look down through the rest of this pitching staff, we've got a couple of pretty crappy pitchers on it. And we only have 13 pitchers on the staff right now, including John Williams. So I basically traded those two catchers that were never going to be prospects away for a guy who is at least a competent AAA pitcher. And I'm willing to deal with the low work ethic that he brings because, as we've talked about with so many of the other players that we've talked to, we've got a ton of high work ethic players on this team, and there's going to be a lot more pitchers that we talk through in the next few minutes that also have high work ethics. So my thought is that even though Williams probably hasn't reached his full potential, and even though on the margins he could be a negative influence on some of the younger players with his poor work ethic, I think we've got enough guys on the team that can offset that. And he actually will be probably one of the better performers we have coming out of the bullpen at the AAA level this year. That will hopefully help the Indians win a couple extra games. Jose Funes is a marginal prospect, 11th round pick from back in 2042, making his debut in AAA this year. Split last year between single A, high A, and double A after we finally moved him out of rookie ball, and was pretty competent there. Not a big time prospect, but does throw in the high 90s. Could be used as a back end of the bullpen arm at the major league level. Jordan Gonzalez, you can see just based on the star ratings, we don't view him as a big-time prospect. Should be a competent-ish AAA pitcher. Really would prefer to have him in AA. Think he would be more effective there. But because we're a little low in AAA pitchers at this point, and he's got a good personality with that high work ethic, that hopefully can offset the poor work ethic of John Williams. Keep him on the AAA team since we need a body up here, or we need multiple bodies up here. Lan Feng Kui, 33-year-old organizational filler. Could he help us? If we had a bunch of injuries at the majors, sure. Good personality with good leadership and adaptability. The high greed isn't great, but we've got enough players with good personalities that doesn't bother us. Emmanuel Langford is another guy kind of similar to Jordan Gonzalez. If he didn't have a good personality with high intelligence, he probably would still be in AAA. But he's got a good personality, and we needed a body in AAA, so we promoted him from AA, even though he's probably not quite ready for this level. Angel Salgado, 27-year-old. This guy is just a body. Nothing special in terms of his personality, but he is a player who is at least ready for AAA, and according to our scouts, might be ready for the majors. Hopefully, with that 35 stuff, would never need to pitch him at the major league level. but he has been pretty productive through A ball over the course of his career. 27 years old. We need bodies at AAA this year, so we are willing to put him on the roster. Jeffrey Top, not surprisingly, good personality with high intelligence and low greed. Just a filler at almost 37 years old, but like the good personality. Luis Molina, 31-year-old, spark plug personality, another guy who's organizational filler, but a competent AAA pitcher. Alfredo Servin is a guy we picked up in a trade last offseason. He is a borderline prospect, 23 years old, good personality, extreme ground ball pitcher with the really good movement. He could be a useful back end of the bullpen arm at the major league level, and he's also a good influence on those around him with the personality, so that's why he's on the team. David Villalona, 23-year-old international free agent signing of ours from 8 years ago, just hasn't really developed as much as we would have hoped. You can look at his profile, and best case scenario, he's a fifth starter or a back of the bullpen kind of guy. But at 23 years old, we're going to finally give him a shot in AAA this year after he went 11-10 with a 3.69 ERA in AA last year. See what he can do, but he is a borderline prospect at this point. Angel Villegas, like the fact that he's a good leader, but 25 years old, did well in AA, particularly last year, but he's a guy, not the guy. But all of those good personalities here among the pitchers, with the exception of Williams, and all the good personalities among the position players, are really here to influence this guy. The last pitcher we're going to talk about, Devin Smith. This is a guy who we picked in the 6th round from the University of Rhode Island about a year and a half ago. Looks like he is just about ready to be a big-time major leaguer. Also has a good personality. Doesn't throw all that hard. He's a finesse pitcher. But he was 14-9 in AAA last year with a 3.24 ERA. You could see he struck out 253 batters in 197 and a third innings, number 93 prospect in baseball. So he is an even more legitimate prospect than those outfielders that we talked about. You can see that he and Ceballos kind of jump off the page compared to some of those outfielders that we mentioned, Drake, Godfrey, and Rivera. Smith is really on the team right now simply because I have a great pitching staff at the major league level right now. So one, we're kind of waiting for an injury to bring him up, but two, more honestly, being a low budget team with the Pittsburgh Pirates, with the 25th budget in baseball, 23rd payroll in baseball right now, I am very sleazily manipulating his service time. Going to probably keep him down for the first month of the season to hopefully ensure that we have an extra year of control of him before he hits free agency. Given that I've got a really good pitching staff, I don't feel like we need to bring him up right away. And given that, at least according to our scout, he still does have some work to do as far as his control. Maybe he can pick up another notch or two of control in the first month of the season down in AAA before we bring him up where the games really matter. And as I talked about, we have surrounded him with a lot of good personality, so I think there will be a pretty good influence on his development from the good personalities that he's surrounded with in AAA, as well as the good coaching staff that we've surrounded him in AAA that we talked about earlier. So that broadly is how this team is set up, and if we were to go through any of these other kind of 3 mid to lower level teams, AA, high A, and single A, you would see a similar pattern in terms of the composition of the roster and the fact that compared to some other people, we probably have more older people on the teams. You can see, looking at our high A team, we've got 34-year-old center fielder Jose Soto, captain personality, high leadership, loyalty, and work ethic. Even though he's wrecked physically, just a good guy to have around the team. Looking down in single A, I'm sure there's an older guy here. Willis Reynoso, second baseman in Bradenton. High leadership, high adaptability, good influence in the clubhouse on those around him. Looking here in single A, center fielder Ivan Ocampo, 29 years old. Captain personality, high leadership, high loyalty, high work ethic, low greed. So that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as how I set up the individual rosters for each of the individual teams. If you've got thoughts on how I could do things better, would love to hear them down below. Comments, other questions, other things you'd like us to investigate in the future. Would love to hear about those things too. Hope you found this useful. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. And hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.